A few years back when I was in college, I was selling the previous semester's required textbooks on Craigslist. I was a college student, so I definitely needed whatever cash I can make from them. Anyways, I got a few offers, but they never went through, and at this point I was getting pretty desperate. I had to sell those books as soon as possible because the authors would usually release a new edition every year or so. I get this text message from this person that says they want to buy all my books. I simply assumed that they were going for the same certificate as me and required the same books for those professors. Looking back, I was a complete idiot. At first, this person wanted to meet up at my place. I was desperate but not completely stupid. I instantly objected and offered a more suitable location, such as the campus. The person said they live in the opposite direction and said it would be preferable if they could meet halfway. I figured it was another poor college student who couldn't spend much money on gas. I agreed and sent a location that seemed to be public enough, which was a gas station, but I didn't know the area. I requested we meet any time from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. simply because I had night classes to study for and attend a 7 p.m. class. I also don't like meeting up with strangers at night anyways. The day of, I get about 10 texts from the person constantly apologizing that they can't make it in that time frame and beg me to meet after 5:30 p.m. I genuinely felt bad for the individual and accepted, even though it was cutting close to both my classes and not wanting to deal with them in the night. It usually gets dark around 6 p.m. here. I end up driving the 20 minutes to get to the gas station and I arrive a little early around 5:15. I was reviewing some notes for class and then I got a text. "Hey, I can't make it to our meetup spot. Can we meet here instead?" I looked on my map and it was an auto body repair shop that stayed open until 8 p.m. I figured why not, but noticed it was another 10 minutes out. I told him yes and drove out there. Now I didn't know the area we were meeting in, but it had a ton of one-way streets and back alleys. It really creeped me out. I arrived at the destination only to find that it was in the back alley behind the shop. Not only that, but it was located on a one-way street, it was nighttime, and located in a not-so-good neighborhood. I text this person asking where they are, and that I'm going to be late for my class. There was no response. I didn't receive a response until another 10 minutes later. All the text said was, "I'm almost there." At this point, I'm beyond ticked off and just focused on checking how bad traffic was to get back. I received a ton more texts from the person saying, "I'm almost there, I'm almost there." It was at this point where a completely blacked out SUV rolls up coming down the street from the wrong way, with the headlights completely off. All the windows were completely tinted with at least 75% window tinting. I panicked a little inside until I saw 4 people in hoodies get out. Then I panicked even more. All I had in my mind was to get the heck out of here. I couldn't go forward because their SUV was blocking the road in front of me. I freaked out, threw the car in reverse, and floored it out of there. Once I got to the T intersection of that street, I looked at them for a split second and they just stood there, their hoods hanging over their eyes. I figured it wasn't worth the risk of $100 and just left. Needless to say, I got taught a very valuable lesson. If you're going to meet up with people on Craigslist, always bring another person, never meet at night, meet in a well-known area, and don't risk your life for some extra bucks. I'm just very glad that I got out of this whole situation unharmed. I listed my washer and dryer on Craigslist when I was moving out of my apartment. The reason I sold them was because my new apartment that I was going to move into didn't have a plug for the washer and dryer. The guy who bought the dryer was great. He was getting it for his daughter who was going to college. I helped him load it up in the truck, he gave me payment, and I never heard from him again. The guy who bought the washer was a different story though. I got a text from him asking if it was still available. We haggled the price, all normal stuff, set a time, and I waited for him to get there. Now I only had about 1 week left in the apartment, so I didn't care too much about random people coming to my home like I normally would. Pretty much all my stuff was moved into my new place, but the internet wasn't turned on yet, so I was still just sleeping on an air mattress in the old one for the time being. He ended up being a few hours late and showed up in a truck that was used for transporting large glass panes. He had like 5 people with him crammed onto the front bench seat of the truck. They loaded it onto the truck while it was leaning at a 30-degree angle against the glass pane rack. He tried to haggle it down to a lower price, but I didn't budge. He left and I thought it was done. Later that night, I started getting texts from him about how it doesn't work and he wants his money back. I told him as it was written in the post that it was sold as is and was working. I assume he damaged it in the way he rigged it on his truck. Well, after a day, he starts calling me and cussing me out, texting death threats, and I have other random numbers calling me doing the same. 2 nights after I sold it, I wake up at 3 a.m. with people banging on my door yelling. Luckily, I lived on the 2nd floor with no easy access to the windows. I sat there for about 15 minutes while they continued to yell through the door. They eventually stopped and I was able to go to bed. The next day, I moved the rest of my stuff into my new apartment and never went back other than to turn in the keys. I still got calls and texts from him on random numbers for over 2 months over a $150 washer. Needless to say, this was the last time I ever sold anything on Craigslist. After my second year of college, I wanted to move into an apartment. I had basically no real friends to choose from, so I decided to try Craigslist. I made an ad for a housing wanted, described myself, to put a picture, because I found myself more drawn to messaging people I could actually see first, and my number for texting. I stated I was more interested in rooming with girls since I am a girl. This one guy messages me saying his name is Oliver and he has a nice apartment. The rent was really cheap, too cheap, and he said I could have the first month free. I considered it for a while because at the time I had no other good prospects. I talked to him for a bit, added him on Facebook to chat over Messenger so it was a bit faster. I regretted that pretty quickly because he started being super weird to me. He was a middle-aged looking guy. He talked about how he worked at a tattoo shop and could get me a job, prefacing it by saying that I could just sit and draw and that it always helped to have a pretty girl drawing at the tattoo shop. At one point I complimented his dog and he said, "Thanks, she's the only woman in my life besides my mom." At this point I obviously knew I wasn't going to move in with him, but for a bit it was making me laugh, so I talked to him a bit longer. The conversation divulged into him essentially telling me he wanted me to be his girlfriend. I said no, and that he told me he'd pay me $3,000 to fly out to California with him to meet his family, so they would think that he had a girlfriend. When I said no, he kept begging me and telling me everyone thought he was a loser and all I'd have to do was hold his hand. I deleted and blocked him on Facebook, then he began texting me and asking me to send him inappropriate pictures of myself. He said, "Please, I've never seen a 19-year-old before." He continued badgering me despite me only replying once to say no and that I had a boyfriend. A couple hours later I received an inappropriate picture of him. Surprisingly though, he apologized later that night and never did message me again. This guy was definitely a creep and totally lonely, and from that point forward I never used Craigslist again. Back in high school I was selling some stuff on Craigslist. This guy hits me up and he was looking to buy my item. The date and time he wanted to meet up didn't work for my work schedule, so I told him I could meet later that week. Fast forward a couple days, I get off work, and as soon as I step out, I get a call from a blocked number, which typically means police enforcement in my mind. I answer, and they say, "Hi, this is the Kansas City Police Department, and we noticed you had a communication with blank." I don't remember his name, that's why I left it blank. Then they asked, "What is your relationship to him, and how do you know him?" I don't know him, but I do believe that might have been a guy I was trying to do a Craigslist deal with. They responded saying, "Thank you, that is all." At the time it didn't really hit me, but after work I went over to a friend's house for dinner. As I walk in, my friend's mom is watching the news and she exclaims, "Did you hear what happened? They found a girl murdered." Minutes later on the screen, the news report states that the police have found the primary suspect of the murder and is currently in police custody. Not long later, the man was found guilty. I literally could have been that poor girl, but I am really thankful to this day that it wasn't me. I know this was a short story, but it really freaks me out and I just wanted to share it.